Carson City School Board meeting to order. It's January 25th, 2022 at 7 p.m. The first item would be the adoption of the agenda as submitted.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any board discussion? Any discussion about this item from the public? Any online comments?
No, Mr. Varner.
Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No opposition, the motion carries. We'll go ahead and do the flag salute, and if Mr. Mike Walker would lead us. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Before we move on, if we could, I'd like to see if we could take a moment of silence for Judith Robinson, who's a current Carson High School employee who recently passed away, and Bruce Brown, a longtime substitute teacher at Eagle Valley Middle School. Thank you. It would now call for the superintendent report. Mr. Stokes.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board, members of the community. I have just a few things to share with you. First off, I'm pleased to report that as of tomorrow morning, our bus service returns to normal. So we've got staff back and well and able to carry forward. Obviously, because there is a narrow margin of what we have to fully operate our buses, if there are individuals who call in sick tomorrow, we'll still be able to operate. There may be a few delays, however, so we just give that information out to our families to be aware. And associated with that condition of illness, we just ask that our families, our staff, our students, all do that before you come to school wellness check. We'd like to encourage folks to stay home if they have any signs of illness like sore throat, fever, coughing, etc. And then lastly, just a reminder that in a couple of weeks on February the 7th, that will be a professional development day for our staff. And so there will be no students in school that day. And Mr. President, that concludes my report.
Any questions for Mr. Stokes? Seeing none, we'll call for board reports. Do we have anybody from Carson High School? And please come forward. Thank you. Thank you. Do we have anybody here from Pioneer? Seeing nobody, we'll move on to the Nevada Association of School Boards update.
There's no update at this time. They're still trying to decide on the Region 3 appointment for NIAA, but we haven't had a meeting lately, so thank you.
Okay, we'll go ahead and, anybody from the association with a report? Yeah, seeing none. Then we'll move into our board reports, and we'll start with Mr. Don Creaney.
I have a few announcements from Dr. Lee Conley at Eagle Valley Middle School. He wants to announce that they've wrapped up the winter map testing at Eagle Valley, and many students showed tremendous growth. Also, the construction continues to progress rapidly, and we continue to plan for a successful future as our staff and student populations grow. Very excited about the new addition. And thank you, President Varner, for the moment of silence for Mr. Brown, who was a longtime sub for Eagle Valley Middle School, recently passed away. Students wrote cards to his wife to state how much they enjoyed working with him. He will be missed. And a little bit from Lee on Bruce Brown. He attended the U.S. Naval Academy and served as a Navy SEAL. He got his teaching credentials while serving in the Navy and taught in Delmar for 14 years. He subbed in the Carson School District since 2016 and loved it. The kids loved and respected him, and he taught, especially our young boys, how to be respectful and hardworking. He was a true asset to Eagle Valley Middle School and was part of our family. And then lastly, just on a personal note, just for the record, I know I've talked to some of my colleagues about this. 2022 will be my final year representing District 6 on the school board. I will not be seeking re-election. My wife and I started our parent volunteering at Seeliger 16 years ago when we moved here with a third grader and a 2-year-old. That third grader graduated from Carson High in 2016, and that 2-year-old will graduate this year in June. My children have always been my connection to the schools. It has been my honor and privilege to serve on the board for the past 5 years. I invite parents and townspeople to step up and serve on the school board. We need people that truly care about the students and staff of Carson School District. People that can set aside politics and pettiness and make decisions not for personal ambition, but for the betterment of the district. Thanks.
Joe?
Thank you. I don't have a report tonight. I just wanted to extend my, understanding for the bus situation we had early in the week. I know that was an inconvenience for a lot of people. It was something that fell upon all of us as a surprise, but when we don't have staff to operate the buses, we don't have staff. So anyway, that's all I had for tonight.
Lupe?
I do not have a report this evening.
Stacy?
Mrs. Squires didn't have anything to report from Empire, and Trustee Ramirez and I met the principal chambers at Carson High on Friday. So it was a good meeting and a lot of dialogue back and forth.
Mike?
So as one of the teachers at Seeliger when Dawn was a volunteer, congratulations and thank you for your service, Mr. Creaney. And for Mark Twain Elementary School, tomorrow the fourth graders will be participating in the National NAEP assessment, and they are in the middle of their access testing for ELL learners. And that concludes my report.
Laurel?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Carini, for your service. And also, I'd like to thank Mr. Conley for sharing and for you sharing the information about Bruce Brown. I forgot to email Mr. Brown at Fritch this morning to get a board report for Fritch, so I don't have one for them. But for Fremont Elementary, Dr. Ward said they are so grateful for their staff who absolutely came together and lived their mantra of find a way. They've gone above and beyond to ensure that the students can have school in the building by helping and supporting one another when we are short on substitutes due to illness. Also, she wants to thank the staff and the Carson City Sheriff's Department, particularly our SROs, for their support of their traffic efforts. 80% of the students qualify for busing at Fremont, and so the last couple of days have been trying, and all parties have risen to the occasion. They've adjusted with some of the parents picking up some of the students at Hope Crossing Church, and she'd like to thank Nick Emery for the multiple day use of the entire church campus. And she's very proud to be a part of the Fremont team and the community effort and extends kudos to all around. Also, Fremont is well into their access testing for all students with English as their second language, and they're looking forward to seeing their students' growth in language acquisition. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Laurel. Dawn, I'd also like to thank you for your service. You've been a very good board member, and we wish you the best of luck in the future. But I know we'll be working together the rest of the year, but thank you. From Carson Middle School, Principal Sadler would like students to be reminded that if they would like some extra time and assistance completing homework at school, they'll be able to sign up to take tutoring before school, after school, and during lunchtime. This will start on Tuesday, February 8th, and more information will be forthcoming on Parent Square. And that's the only report I have for tonight. So moving ahead, we'll move to public comment.
Mr. President,
Yes.
just as a point of order, I think you called association reports as part of number 4. You may want to just call one more time so we're consistent with the agenda.
No, thank you. Do we have any body here from the association with a report? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on then. For public comment, comments will be accepted in person or through virtual participation via email. Comments may be made by members of the public on any matter within the authority of the board. Please note that public comments will be taken on items marked for public action before action is taken on such items, and members of the public are encouraged to comment on such items at the time they are being considered. Although members of the board may respond to questions and discuss issues raised during public comment, no action may be taken on such matters until the matter is placed on agenda for action at a meeting of the board. In making public comment, speakers are asked to come to the table or podium, speak into the microphone, and sign in and identify themselves for the records. Speakers are instructed to limit their comments to no more than 3 minutes, regardless of whether the comments are made in person or through virtual participation, and to simply not repeat comments from other people. We'll now call for public comment. Anybody in the public like to come up and comment? Please come up and state your name for the record.
Good evening, board members. My name is Kristen Winnicky. I am here this evening as a very concerned citizen and to make the community aware of the effects of masks on speech and language. I have been a school-based speech and language pathologist in Nevada for the last 15 years. 12 of those years were spent here in Carson City. I am here to tell you that masks are making kids' speech and language worse. Please listen. Kids are struggling to hear. They're struggling to focus and learn from facial cues and movements. It's true, our kids are suffering academically. Schools are also creating fear and paranoia in our poor children, who are already paying a price socially and academically. Fear is a very strong emotion. It affects certain parts of our brain. One of those parts is the communication center. It literally shuts off the blood flow to our communication center. That's a fact. You can see for yourself on brain scans. Well, I'm a professional. I've been doing a ton of research. I consult with colleagues, and I've made some calls. One of those calls I made was to the Frontline Doctors Legal Department. I was informed that there are many lawsuits throughout the country challenging the forced mask mandates. Many are being won, but they need a lot more lawyers and more hands on deck. I was then told and shown how to access their legal section on their website, which contains valuable and relevant information. I printed up some forms and made copies for members of the community, so whoever is here, I am glad to give you those. I also have a copy for you, Mr. Stokes, as well as President Mr. Varner. Please read through these forms very carefully, as there is a lot of other important information about the effects of masks, not just on speech. I am asking you to make copies and pass these forms out to your families and friends. Please let them know the effects masks are having on students. And I am hoping that we can all come together to promote change and do whatever it takes to get these dang masks off these children. Thank you. I don't know how I get these up to you because I know we're all social distancing, but I have some copies. Thank you, Mr. Stokes. There's 2 copies, one for you and one for Mr. Varner. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other public comment? Please come to the podium and state your name for the record.
Barb Mathers for the record. I just wanted to share some food for thought for a quote, basically, or just some facts that are going around through the grassroots groups that I'm in. It says, among all the vaccines I have known in my life, diphtheria, tetanus, measles, rubella, chickenpox, hepatitis, meningitis, and tuberculosis, I also want to add the flu and pneumonia. I've never seen a vaccine that forced me to wear a mask and maintain my social distance, even when you are fully vaccinated. I had never heard of a vaccine that spreads the virus even after vaccination. I had never heard of rewards, discounts, incentives to get vaccinated. I never saw discrimination for those who didn't. If you haven't been vaccinated, no one has tried to make you feel like a bad person. I've never seen a vaccine that threatens the relationship between family, colleagues, and friends. I have never seen a vaccine used to threaten livelihoods, work, or school. I have never seen a vaccine that would allow a 12-year-old to override parental consent. After all the vaccines I listed above, I have never seen a vaccine like this one, which discriminates, divides, and judges society as it is. It's a powerful vaccine. She does all these things except immunization. If we still need a booster dose after we are fully vaccinated, and we still need to get a negative test after we are fully vaccinated, and we still need to wear a mask after we are fully vaccinated, and we still need to be hospitalized after we are fully vaccinated, it will likely come to its time for us to admit that we've been completely deceived. I recently watched a video of a mother who went to the elementary school with her 8-year-old son who hasn't been wearing a mask and has just been sitting in the office for basically an 8-hour school day because he refuses to wear a mask. How is that possibly a good solution for the kids who don't want to wear masks to just sit in the office? He was given a couple of worksheets to work on, and then he was playing games on a tablet. That's what he did, an 8-year-old, all day. And when the mom went to talk to the principal, he said that the school board is forcing the schools to uphold the mask mandates. You guys keep telling us that there's nothing you can do and your hands are tied, but the principal specifically said the school board is forcing these mandates. You guys, each as individuals, have the option to not wear masks when you go to the grocery store, when you go to the department store, when you go to church. Laurel and Superintendent Stokes and I all go to the same church. I haven't been kicked out of church for not wearing a mask. You literally have the choice to not wear a mask. If the school board is forcing our students to wear masks and upholding Governor Sisolak's mandates, it's completely wrong. Parents should have the choice to choose to not have their kids in masks. And if you guys continue forcing this, the children who don't want to wear masks
Thank you, but
are
your
going
3
to be
minutes is
sick.
up.
Please just let parents have the choice, and I'd like to submit this for the record.
Yes, thank you. Any other public comment? Please come up to the podium and state your name for the record.
My name is Miles Humphreys, for the record. I'm going to kind of approach this a little different way because it seems like this board and other boards have seemed to ignore truth, logic, and common sense. And when it comes to the things about masks, the things about safety, the psychology of it. So I say you guys have on the agenda about all the fights going on with the schools and whatnot. And there is a mask issue with the fights going on. It specifically takes away the identity of these children. They have no identity whatsoever with the mask. You guys all look like the same people with your mask, other than a different color on a couple of you. So, and then we're having staffing issues, and it's almost like you guys are mad because people don't want to comply with the nonsense when they realize that the majority of everything that's happening in the school system is nonsensical, doesn't have logic, doesn't have common sense, and it goes against everything outside of what is happening in other states, other countries, and whatnot. So I think since you guys are on the side of safety, let's really double down on safety. Let's make sure that the kids have 2 masks. Let's really go after it. Let's double mask the kids. Let's go to distance learning, and let's really hit it hard, because you guys took an active stance when you listened to the parents last week about the fights and whatnot. You didn't really want to kind of get into the mix of what's really causing it. So you're looking into the safety, but let's really take this whole mask thing, since you've ignored all the doctors, the common sense, and the logic behind the mask. So let's double up, and let's also do the distance learning. I mean, it's just a suggestion. It's my own opinion, but I think if we're going to go after the safety very seriously, let's double mask the kids, and let's really hit it hard. And then let's see where maybe we could get an attaboy from Sisolak and whatnot. Because it seems like there's a lot of political posturing, a lot of political theater, and we might as well run with it, right? So I don't have much more to say other than let's get real serious on the safety, double up the kids, do distance learning, and then let's make sure that all the kids playing sports under the Carson City community really hit it hard too with the mask. And yeah, because this board seems to, it's frustrating. And you guys were the last ones to put the kids in the school. I'm not gonna let that down. So let's be the first ones to double up the mask. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Please come forward to the podium and state your name for the record.
My name is Jessica Jocelyn, and I'm not exactly sure how to follow that. I am a physician assistant, and I graduated from Stanford Medical School. And I wanted to come. I'm also a parent, but I'm not coming as an angry parent. I'm coming as a concerned healthcare provider who's concerned about the future of all of us and our children, and the children being our future. I don't have any copies really for you guys, but here is an article that has over 200 articles about masks and if they work, if they don't work, what they cause, illnesses that people get because of masks, how it's changing word formation, mouth formation, understanding comprehension, how people, young and old, are psychologically responding to it. And I can't share this with you. I'll share it with you if you want my phone number. I'm happy to take you to tea or coffee and go over this. But this is research that I've done for the last 2 years on masks. I have 2 articles in here that specifically say that masks work. These 2 articles were written during this pandemic by some of Fauci's really great friends. So there's a lot of money and politics behind those 2 articles. There's 35 or more other articles in here that talk about the harms, the dangers, and the uselessness of masks. If you've ever looked at the science, then you would know that the masks don't do anything. As somebody who's done surgery, the reason we wear masks in surgery is so that we don't spit on you when our nose runs. It doesn't run into your body cavities. We put masks on sick people so that they don't cough on us because it's the droplets we worry about. When these people talk about, catching a mosquito in a, fishing net, that is exactly what's going on with the mask. I wish I had more copies of this. I wish I had some more copies of this to share. I can actually airdrop the article that these all came from so you guys can actually check out these links if you like. But I would be happy to discuss any of this with you guys. Again, my name is Jessica. I went to Stanford Medical School, and I just wanted to let you know that the science proves that these things don't work, and I'm happy to discuss it with anybody because I think everybody should know what the science really is. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Jessica. Any further public comment? Please come to the podium and state your name for the record.
Hi, it's Heather Coe, and I wanted to let you know, not only do I agree with what everyone has said, but we had 2 days where school was out because COVID was running rampant. My son had many friends over. And down the street, he has other friends that had many friends over. None of those kids wore masks. So as soon as they leave the school, it doesn't make a difference because they all get together and live their normal lives, unlike this nightmare that you're making them live in schools. But yet, this is what people are focused on because our children are being punished, and it's horrifying what you're doing to them with masks. But even worse, the fear is gross. And I'd like to know, since the beginning of this, the one thing I came for was to ask about solutions on how to get our children back on track. Since the teachers have failed them, you guys failed them, you closed the schools, and there's not one person that has ever gotten back to me. Not one. My son's friends, most of his friends have failed most of their classes. Is there anyone out there that is doing anything, offering up extra classes, having solutions come back so that these kids can be caught up? Because that is what we're asking for. Just do your jobs. All we want is no politics, math, science, reading, writing. We just want to go back to basics and a normal life. And these kids live it outside of school, just so you know. So whatever their diseases they're getting outside of school, they're bringing right back in. And the masks don't work. But I would like someone to get back to me, since this has been months that I have been asking for someone to do something that doesn't have to do with politics, masks, diversity, or whatever else, and teach our kids and catch them up so they don't fall further behind. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Any further public comment? Please state your name for the record when you get to the podium.
Hello, my name is Rochelle Benning. I have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old in kindergarten and preschool in Carson City. Some of you may have noticed that yesterday a Supreme Court judge in New York State ruled that mask mandates are unconstitutional and declared them null, void, and unenforceable. If mask mandates are unconstitutional in New York, they are unconstitutional everywhere. They are unconstitutional for adults and children. We've seen parents and experts speak on how unhealthy masks are. We've seen the testing on children's masks that show how horribly infested they are. And recently we had the CDC tell us that the types of masks that our children are wearing are literally useless. We've all heard the slew of social, emotional, educational, and psychological effects removing human faces has on our children's developing minds and spirits. We've followed the money, and we know that the longer this goes on, the longer the school's funding goes on. The point is, we already knew that mandates were unconstitutional, but now we have a Supreme Court ruling in New York State to back that up, and it is going to spread farther. Forcing citizens to do things against their will is not only un-American and unconstitutional, it is inhumane. It is time for our school district to play catch-up in the game of human rights and end these mandates for our children immediately. Other Nevada counties that have an option not to wear masks are flourishing, and don't we want this for our children too? Thank you.
Thank you, Rochelle. Any further public comment? Seeing none, any online public comment?
Yes, Mr. Varner. This first comment is from Miss Carrie Pryor. She's the vice principal at Fremont Elementary School, and she would like to thank the district leadership for taking the all-hands-on-deck approach the last few weeks. As a site administrator, she's extremely grateful for those who have been out subbing, checking in at sites, and filling in holes for us. Thank you to the TOSAs, those are our teachers on special assignments, who have come to sites to sub. All the extra support has been needed and doesn't go unnoticed. We all know you have work to do and roles to fill in the district. However, putting student safety and learning first is the most important. This next comment is from Liz Davis. She has a 16-year-old grandchild attending Carson High School. Think back of when you were 16. This age is a fragile time of life. Suicide in 2022 is a real tragedy. One cause is bullying. The teachers and administration have bullied my grandchild for not wearing a face mask, which is optional according to the school board guidelines. Treating a child with disrespect does not gain the respect of the child. Stop the bullying. You, Carson High School, must acknowledge the lives that you are training and molding to be respectful and responsible adults. You have an impact on the adult this child will become. As a result, Carson High School has lost a 4.0 student. This comment is from Robert Harris. What did Einstein say the definition of insanity is? Keep doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. When you look around Carson schools, the kids have been wearing masks since early September and cases have not subsided. Why are the schools still telling the children to wear cloth masks? When the superintendent first decided to rule by fiat immediately after per pupil funding is locked in via a newspaper article in early September, it was to keep the kids in school. At the high school, they are quarantining kids at home after contact tracing regardless of the mask policy. Yet Carson Health and Human Services isn't even doing this anymore. Is this policy effective against the microscopic airborne virus? Is it beneficial or healthy for the children to wear a cloth mask for 6 to 8 hours a day? Is it helping with attendance? Board members have said that this policy has been turned political, so I looked around the country and found red states, which you have an option for wearing a mask, and blue states, for the most part, are still under a state of emergency and in full crisis mode. Yet the total case count per capita is similar in red and blue states alike. So who is making this political? The reopening plan updated January 11, 2022, has on page 3, item 5, masks are optional for the 2021 school year. 5B mentions if a localized breakout happens, face coverings will be used on a temporary basis. I interpret localized as school by school and temporary to maybe 2 to 3 weeks. With this being said, the entire school year, except for the first 2 weeks, this has been required by the superintendent. If the teachers want to wear a mask, they should be able to wear it, but stop scaring the kids with false hopes and claims of protection. The psychological toll this has caused in our children is evident in the violence at the high school, along with the self-harm case increases. In stressful times, our children need to feel safe and not to be able to trust competent decision-making that is based on facts. I sent the president and the superintendent of the school board an article from Yahoo News quoting the CDC director that says cloth masks are the least effective type of mask. The ineffectiveness of masks have been proven by Carson City schools this year. Stop the insanity for the sake of our humanity. This comment on Mr. Varner is from Jason Tingle. He's the father of 4. By now I have proven more than I could possibly have ever imagined. Douglas County just had an outbreak at their schools, and they do not have masks. Carson City School District had an outbreak, and they do have masks. What does that tell you? It tells all of us that masks don't work. Meanwhile, while you guys twiddle your thumbs and trying to placate all to the naysayers, they refuse to accept reality, and our children are suffering psychologically. I'm not the one who has to live with that regret. You guys are. I'm not sure what else I can provide to show you this. England is shutting down everything. Why? Because they know that this is absolute garbage and they see the actual real science. If all the counties are having breakouts, whether they are wearing masks or not, then what is the point of putting these things over our children's faces when they can clearly, and I mean clearly, see that they're not working? That evidence is present now. What you don't see is the psychological damage you are doing to the children and what that will come up in the future. This cannot be allowed anymore. This is a storm brewing. Parents are really pissed off. The kids have a decision to make, and if you are one of those that invested everything and put all of your chips in, oh, you need to let down your pride and admit that this doesn't work and you were wrong. And Mr. Varner, that's all I have.
We'll now close public comment, and we'll move on to agenda item number 7, which is a report of the type of services provided by CCSD by Northwestern Regional Professional Development Program. Tasha Fusing and Sarah Cunningham will make the presentation. And this is for discussion only.
Thank you, President Varner. Tasha Fuson. For the record, I just want to actually introduce Sarah Cunningham. She is the Director of Northwest RPDP, and she's going to give us an overview of the services that were provided to our district.
Good evening. Once again, for the record, my name is Sarah Cunningham, and I am the Director with the Northwest Regional Professional Development Program. We're also known as RPDP. To provide a little background on who we are and what we do, we are a small department, and we are funded 100% through legislation. We serve 6 school districts in the Northwest region, including, of course, Carson City, Douglas County, Lyon County, Story, Churchill, and Washoe County. We have 12 and a half teacher allocations. They're teachers on special assignment, 2 classified employees and myself in our department. We have 5, we represent 5 different school districts. So we have 2 employees actually housed here in Carson City and 4 of the other school districts. However, our work crosses each school district. Our purpose is to provide professional learning to educators. So we are a service at no cost to school districts. We come into school buildings. We might collaborate with district leadership, curriculum departments. In fact, this evening I was at the Carson City Professional Development Center, facilitating a class with Mary Prey, the professional learning coordinator here in Carson City. And it can look in a variety of ways. Again, it could be a site-specific request or even an in-service class where participants sign up on their own and they can receive credit. We also provide courses for recertification, such as the Parent Involvement and Family Engagement course, which is required for teacher license, and endorsement courses. So we do a lot of different projects, and we serve a lot of educators in our region. In Carson City last year, we served 347 unique educators, and we had 451 duplicated. So that means some of those individuals may have attended more than one of our offerings. So maybe we did a professional learning opportunity, for instance, at their site, and maybe a few of those same individuals signed up for one of our recertification courses. Some of the content areas in which we serviced in Carson City last year, 32% of our services were focused in computer education and technology. As you can imagine, that was a big need across the region and the state. It reflects our overall regional data as well. We had 16% of our services were provided in science. We also had 12% in computer science, as well as math, English language arts, parent involvement, and administrative support as well. 80% of our work last year was identified as instructional, so it was very focused in content. That is what our employees, our teachers on special assignments, they each have at least one area of expertise. So I have, for instance, a math facilitator, so she has that deep knowledge in math, science, and so forth. And really, our work is intended to be an extension of the work that's already being done in a district. We do not want to bring in additional work or a different message when we talk about professional learning. We work side by side with the school district in the work that is happening in the district. I was invited throughout the summer on some of the meetings with the teachers on the special assignments. Some of my staff attends the meetings with Carson City's curriculum meetings, so that we are in constant communication so that we can help enhance and collaborate on the projects that we support. And one big project I'm very excited to share with all of you, and it actually came from a request from Carson City, and it's now providing support across the region. It was about a year ago. Carrie Pryor, who was the professional learning coordinator at that time, contacted me and asked if we provided an endorsement program for gifted and talented education, otherwise known as GATE. Teachers who hold a license can take additional coursework and get that endorsement on their license. There's 4 required courses from the state, and then they can provide services to students who have been identified as gifted. Well, we didn't have that program at the time. I had a request from another school district within the same week, and a year later, I'm excited to say, with the collaboration of 2 educators in Carson City and some leaders in Washoe County School District, we now offer that GATE endorsement, and we just began our 3rd cohort. So we have several educators now in our region, including Carson City, who will have their endorsement in GATE. And what's great is, again, because we are funded to provide professional learning, we can provide these courses at a very low cost. The costs in these cases are directly to Southern Utah University. That's where the credits come through. We don't get any of those funding. So now teachers for $63 can take one of our 3 credit classes, and eventually will have their GATE endorsement, so we can better serve more children in Carson City and across our region. So our work continues this year in Carson City. Again, our GATE project is one of our big projects. As I mentioned, our parent involvement and family engagement course, I'm co-facilitating with Mary Prey. We're working in schools in Carson City in English language arts, in math, and in science. So my science facilitator collaborates here in Carson City, and they work collectively to help support educators in science. And that's just a little bit of what we do here in RPDP. Any questions?
Thank you for your work. And is there any questions from the board? Laurel?
This is just a comment. I serve on our Gate Advisory Committee, and I just want to give you a big congratulations and thank you for helping to organize the Gate endorsement course available to more teachers. Every teacher that I've talked to who has gone through the course has said it not only helps to be a better teacher to those Gate students, but to all students. And so I'm just really impressed that we have staff that are stepping up in addition to their other responsibilities to help offer this course to train more educators. And then just one question I have, I guess, for Tasha, you might know. How many certified employees do we have? Teachers, staff, rough estimate? I'm just trying to do.
I had to confer with Superintendent Stokes. We have 498.
498 and 347 took professional learning courses last year. That's percentages I can't do because it's not a sale percentage in my head that quickly, but that is a high percentage of our staff that is definitely taking steps to improve their educating capacity. And so I think that says good things about our people, and I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you, Laurel. Any other, Joe?
Yeah, I have a question. I do have a question, and I think the number is actually higher because a lot of teachers and staff and whatnot take training from a variety of different places. And so I think just about all of them are taking training. It's required as part of their licensing. Question for you, to sign up for these courses, is it done through the schools? Can a educator contact you folks directly? I'm thinking, I know in my profession in engineering, I have to keep up my continuing education units, and sometimes you run up to the wire. So can they contact you directly and say, hey, I'd like to take this course, or I need to take something? How does that work, or is it all structured through the schools?
Yes, absolutely. They can always contact me directly. We also, on our website, we post all of our courses. And at the beginning of each quarter, if we are offering anything that's for credit, I put out a document and I share it with Mary Prey and Cheryl Macy here in Carson City School District, and they share that with all of the administrators and push it out to the teachers. So they are typically my point of contact if we have things happening that we're out to offer, and they'll push that out. And then they will also come to me as well if there's a need. If there's something they want to collaborate on, and again, just to be a thought partner, they also will reach out to me and we'll come down and we work together.
Tasha Fuson, for the record, I'd like to give just an example of that, because one of the collaborations we also had this year was to provide training to our administrators in our district on the computer science standards. It's interesting that, sometimes we think, oh, we're all former educators. I was an elementary teacher, for instance, and that I'd be super familiar with all of the standards that my teachers are teaching or my students are learning. But computer science is taught as one of our specials. It's not taught by general education teachers, and those standards are relatively new to our state and into our district. So to be able to work in collaboration with Northwest RPDP to be able to provide that training for our administrators, that was an excellent collaboration. We were able to do that on December 6th. So that's just another example of the type of work that we're able to do to support one another.
Any other discussion? Mike?
I'll just say, as somebody who's worked with Sarah and her team a lot, including in collaborations for PD for a school, the work is always of high quality and useful for teachers. And so I'm just so glad that you are there for our teachers and our students.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Sarah and Tasha, also just thank you for the good work. I know it's a big benefit for our staff to be able to take these courses, and just thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Moving on to agenda item number 8, the report regarding student acts of aggression at Carson High School from the beginning of 2021 2022 school year to present, and discussion on the school's efforts to improve interpersonal relationships. This is for discussion only, and it'll be by Superintendent Stokes and Principal Bob Chambers.
Thank you, President Varner, members of the board. For the record, Richard Stokes. Back in the spring of 2020, the activities and lifestyle that we all became accustomed to and were used to having all stopped because of the pandemic. It wasn't just school impacts, it was going out to eat, it was going out with friends, youth soccer, church activities, anything that puts people in groups essentially came to a stop. As a result, there are many conditions and situations that have impacted us, and I think some of these things probably won't be known for a long time, but it's impacting us right now in the schools in certain ways. And we had a request a while back at our last school board meeting to make a presentation about the activities that are happening at the high school, especially as it applies to aggressive behavior between students. And so here to help make that report is Mr. Bob Chambers, who is principal at Carson High School. Mr. Chambers.
Thank you, Mr. Stokes, President Varner, trustees. Bob Chambers for the record, principal at Carson High School. Bob Chambers, also parent of Carson High School student. Bob Chambers, also about to be parent of 2 students that will go to Carson High School next year. So I'm not only here as a principal, but also a guy who has students inside that building as well. Is the clicker going to work? That'll work. Oh, I didn't turn the clicker on. All right. Sure. All right. So our current numbers for student aggression, and also in your packet, kind of hard to see. Probably should have chosen a different font. 35 total events, and that is of 1/18, but that is also current. We have not had any events since 1/18. Total number of student offenders, 60. Total number of student victims, 15. Now, to help you understand that a little bit, when you talk about student offenders, that could look a variety of ways. One way, in the most typical way, is student combatants. So this would be what you would consider a typical fight, where students face-to-face, one-on-one, and they have a fight. That would be student combatants. So in a scenario like that, those fights tend to last approximately 10 seconds, is about our response time. Those students would then go through a disciplinary system. That disciplinary system would be 4 days out of school suspension, where there's a meeting with parents. There would be a behavior contract that the parents are involved with and the students sign. They are referred to Ron Wood Family Resource Center for anger management and counseling. Then there is a re-entry plan to come back to the school, where they are going to work with a school social worker. If mediation needs to take place, then there's the mediation between the students who had the issues. That would take place. Depending on the style of fight that occurred, the student may also be cited by a school resource officer, depending if it's a disruption of school. So to kind of paint that picture, I think you kind of have to imagine for a disruption of school like lunchtime, when you would have a lot of people gather and now we are disrupting the natural flow of school, right? To be super clear, I don't write tickets. My deans don't write tickets. That is a citation that comes from Carson City Sheriff's Office. Does that make sense? So that is something that they do in conjunction with us, but that is not like a ticket that would come from Carson High School. As you look at another possible disciplinary action would be a 10-day suspension. That suspension would occur more along the lines of a school disruption. And we were unable or became very difficult to break that fight up. People would not stop, people would not comply, et cetera. They would still go through the same mediation process as school social worker, anger management classes. But depending on their behavior and how they react and how we have to react to that, that could increase the overall suspension. All right? Most of our fights, and when I say most, like 70% of our fights are held at the 4-day suspension level with no repeat offenders. Okay, so I think that's a very important thing to keep in mind. No repeat offenders. So it is one and done. And then to kind of go through when you start looking at victims, all right, now that would be, this was not mutual combatants, all right? This person is a true victim of up to assault and or battery. So this was not we square up and we get into a fight. There is a clear victim within that. And those, depending on the severity, can go to long-term suspension up to 180 days. That could be within our long-term suspension. It could be through Pearson, which is no contact with our site because Pearson has its own teachers that they go through, or it could be where they do have contact with our site depending on severity, and they come after school from 2:30-ish to 4 o'clock and receive an education in that manner through our alternative programming, right? I was kind of expecting you guys to probably have questions at this point in time. Shoot.
Well, and I was going to wait till the end, but two things that come to mind. One, what some of the people in the audience I'm sure are waiting for is, a couple of parents came a while back and said, hey, we're having these fights. Doesn't look like you guys are doing anything about it. It appears we are. I know we are because as a board, we got asked to make final determinations on one or two of them recently, and then we were called to be a part, but then it was able to be resolved at the, for lack of a better term, committee level. So maybe you can talk a little more about that sometime in your presentation, and maybe give us like a number of these events. Maybe, well, it looks like you did. I'm sorry. You've got them in here. My eyes aren't that good.
It's all right.
Anyway, and then the cause of these fights. Okay. I mean, when I was a kid in junior high school and high school, fights broke out all the time, every week. It was an unfortunate reality. We didn't have the situations we have now, but that said, what we're going through now with masks and whatnot, I'm curious, how does that, what kind of role are you seeing that masks are playing in this, or other issues are playing in this? Why are they fighting?
Okay. For everything that we're doing, that's on the next slide. And we'll get to that. The causation of the fights, social media. We can track the lion's share of what students are doing is back and forth at home on social media, and then it ramps up, it builds up, and then it spills over onto our site.
Well, and as a fellow administrator, I feel your pain because I think one of the things we also need to keep in the back of our mind is at all levels, principals and district administration teams are trying to deal with unprecedented behavior issues. And not to sound like a broken record, I said it earlier today, it really is, we're in a mental health crisis. And I think that, I don't know that it's masks. What I personally think it is kids being shut down for 2 years in home without any interactions with their friends. And I think the bottom line is, as a school district, we need to find a way to get back to normal as safely and as fastly as possible, because these kids deserve a normal life. Our teachers need a normal life. This is a tough time for everybody. And so, I think when we're thinking of the work that Carson High School is doing, in the back of our mind, we need to also understand that these things are happening at the middle schools. And at the elementary schools, I can only imagine those behaviors are more extreme than they've ever dealt with, because I know at my personal school, that's what's been happening. So I just wanted to give a little bit of background.
I would kind of reiterate a lot of things that Trustee Walker stated. It is overwhelmingly our underclassmen. At about 78% of this is from our underclassmen. Hypothetically, not hypothetically, they have not really, for our freshmen, they haven't experienced a normal school year. They had no idea walking into that building how to be, like, they hadn't been in school since 7th grade. This was the first time I've been in that building for 20 years that I repeatedly saw middle school behavior, like literally raisin fights and having, and just things that you would expect not to see in a high school. We saw those behaviors because I think that they have not been in school. They had lost a lot of just that social contact and how to do school appropriately and properly. So there was a lot of training in the hallways as like how things operate. I can go on to the.
Before you move on, I have a question, if I could.
Go ahead.
I know in previous years, there's always been these type of fights, but I'm wondering if you have any data to show the increase this year from prior years. I know last year wasn't a good year to do it, but any idea of how much of an increase there's been?
Times 3. Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So, and I don't, for those of you who know me well, I'm super transparent. That's my job. That's that times 3. I was a dean of students there for a long time, and we ran a tight ship, and this isn't about like we had this giant shift in philosophy or things that we did or that we weren't doing. We were dealing with a different situation that we'd never been faced with before. With that being said, fights are lessening at Carson High School. The overall feeling in the building is a lot more calm. When you walked into that building in August and September into October, it was palpable. Like you could feel like that it was tense. The building was tense. And so we did respond to it. So in our A3, B4, that's our middle block, that period is longer. We do SEL lesson plans. We've been doing that all year, but as our numbers kept ramping up, there's kind of part of it like maybe it'll get better, and then as it was not getting better, then we shift, and what we do as educators is we teach. Like that's our number one tool when you walk in the building is we teach. So we started really focusing on conflict resolutions within the building. And then just some like other things that have come up from that. You oftentimes hear kids don't have anything to do. So I was like, let's start up intramural sports. Let's get that going again at lunchtime. So we have intramurals for students. And it basically kind of follows the PE schedule. If they're doing basketball, we'll have basketball tournaments. If they're doing volleyball, we can have volleyball tournaments, et cetera. So like give those students who want something to do, who have extra energy, especially since we know we're dealing with a lot of times freshman boys, right? Like let's give them a direction to kind of put that energy. We have lunchtime tutoring. With that, also teachers open up their classrooms to students at lunchtime to eat. Just that's an important side note, because if you go all the way down to the bottom where it says interior hallways have been closed, and that's something that I brought on. Y'all been to Carson High School. It's a big building, and that I don't even know how many doors are in that building. It's a ridiculous amount, and how many exits there are in that building to walk out. So what we did is basically upstairs and downstairs close those interior hallways. Students can go in for tutoring. Students can go in if they're going to meet with a teacher or something like that. Like, that's still totally appropriate, but that is not a place where you can be in an interior, downstairs hallway just kind of hanging out. That is good because it allows us, with our 15 to 20 admin teachers, SROs, to really be able to monitor the hallways. And but it also, and students can also be in the tech center, and we've really opened that up and made that a place for students to go and hang out. But then that also kind of, puts students together, right? To where maybe before you had a lot of kids kind of find their space in a kind of random hallway in Carson High School. Well, now we're all together and or out in the tech center, but they can still go outside, and our seniors still leave campus and go out to lunch and do those things. We did, and you'll see this kind of coming up, we did, one of the bigger lessons that we did is have students identify an on-campus mentor, so that, and it doesn't have to be a teacher. There's a lot of really good adults, whether it's a custodian, cafeteria worker, parapro. We have a lot of fine people on our campus, and the idea is that you might not be, most of our students, like, obviously it's a very small percentage of students who are getting in fights, right? But you might need a person on campus to help guide you, you might have a question about how to, fill out a college application, how to, like, anything that could happen. We wanted those students, we talked to those students about, like, let's identify an adult on this campus that you would go to, that you would consider a mentor, that you feel comfortable talking with to anything about, whether it was a question or just kind of unloading. And you'll see as long as everything works digitally, you'll kind of see the Padlet that we did school-wide where the students kind of named their mentors. One thing that, the student-led climate change committee, I think that was just awesome. And that, I think, just speaks so highly of our students. And I want you to, and I'm very careful because I want our students to know that I recognize, the teachers recognize, you recognize that the people that we're talking about is a very small percentage of students. It is not the masses. And that we have students that are comfortable coming up to administration and going, you know what, I'd like to start a committee for this school. I'd like to, can we have a climate committee for this school? And the answer is absolutely yeah. And so we're moving forward. Their first meeting will be on Thursday, and 100% student-led. That was super cool. Which goes down to the next point. Especially whenever I address the students, I am very conscientious about making sure, I am not painting every single student in this school as a student that gets in a fight, because that's a very dangerous thing to do. I want them to understand, I know that more than likely I'm talking to a small percentage of the students. But the large percentage of the students, what I want you to know is that we're here, and if something's up, we would like to stop it before we have to clean up a mess, right? And that kind of goes back to that idea of mentorship too. So we have reviewed the consequences with the students. As I was talking with students when the fight had already occurred and they're in the office, and they've kind of went through that disciplinary process. And then the tears come and they realize what's happening and how serious this is. And that they're we review all of this with all freshmen at the start of the year. And I realistically, I don't know if they if they think we're bluffing, if they don't know how serious all of this stuff is. When you're running a school of 2,300 students, we can't have fights. It's not something that's conducive to an educational environment. And so we've messaged the students multiple times about the severity and the consequences that are upheld in Carson City School District and Carson High School. Fighting is not an acceptable behavior. And so we've reviewed that with them a few different times. We have our school social workers and our school counselors do resolutions, anger management, mediations with students. And like I said, we have a very good response time. Out in the hallways, if you care to really get in the nuts and bolts of it, if you picture Carson High School, you have the south end, Center Square, north end, we have people appropriately placed. All administrators and SROs are on radios. We don't chase kids. That's a lesson that has been a long learned lesson. Kids come to you if you're appropriately spaced, and then you can stop the group of students. Typically, the ones that want to cause trouble are the front two. You go, you two come with me, and typically we can figure that out. So like the general way we have the school spaced out for lunchtime duties, and we do have other breaks. Almost all of these numbers are at lunch. The other breaks are pretty darn short. So that's questions on that slide.
Joe, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Bob. So on the lunchtime intramural sports, first of all, I can appreciate what you guys, well, I think I can appreciate what you guys are going through, trying to manage 2,300 people, not to mention staff's got to be a pretty tall order. I think about the hallways being closed and all that, and I get why we're doing it. And then the question lends itself when we start talking about these things, the masks, and we start talking about social distancing. Now we're closing hallways down, so we got more people in a tight area. I'm sure it puts you guys, you get questions about that as well. Don't really have a question there. We have to do what we have to do because in the end, we have to keep these kids safe. And, we can debate all day long the effects masks have. I believe they do have some effects, but getting punched in the face has an effect too. So that's something that has to be solved. I'm just curious on lunchtime intramural sports. My understanding is recess and those kinds of things, the kids are outside, they're not required to wear masks. Is that the case? When they're doing intramural sports, are they maskless?
With right now, when they're doing PE and sports, they are maskless.
They're without masks? Okay.
Just for clarification, did you say they're with masks or without masks?
When the students are doing sports, they're maskless.
But without. Okay. Okay.
Thank you for that clarification.
But just like some students mask, like it's their call.
Sure. Yeah, voluntary I get it. Okay, thank you.
All right, next slide. All right, we'll see how so this is the general, like what we're trying to do within our SEL lesson plans. On the left-hand side is kind of like last semester conflict resolution, like we really focused on that. This semester, having students make connections with their fellow students, and also just on our student connectedness as part of our overall school improvement plan, like student connectedness to the school. Okay. And then I'm going to scroll through here. This was the Padlet where the students chose their mentor staff member. All right. As an example, and it's totally impossible to tell, but if you look in the far right-hand corner, the little cursor is very small. That page goes on for a really, really, really long time, right? So it was and I think it was also nice for our teachers to see that they too make a difference within the students' lives and that the students trust them to come talk to them if they're having a hard time or they have a hard question. It's not, well, let me try one more time, see if I can get that to work. It might work.
A stove that inspires magnificent.
All right. Hey, Carson High School Centers, this is Mr. Chambers delivering you a little SEL lesson plan today. Hey, first off, I totally want to thank our juniors and seniors, our upperclassmen, for doing a great job this school year. I really do appreciate you and everything that you bring to the school, mainly your positive energy. It's super important, especially now more than ever, that you guys, I feel that you really appreciate what's going on this year and that you have a regular school year because you remember what high school was like before COVID. And now that we're able to be in school and do everything that we're supposed to be doing, like band, concerts, games, ROTC, travel, like it looks like a school year, I can tell that you guys appreciate that. With that being said, I do believe our freshmen and sophomores are struggling a little bit more acclimatizing to Carson High School. And realistically, it's because they don't exactly know what it's like to be a senator and what it's like to function and operate at Carson High School. If you think about it, the last time that our freshmen and sophomores had a regular school year, they were in middle school, right? Our freshmen were in 7th grade and our sophomores were in 8th grade, right? That's the last time that they experienced a full normal school year. So it's been kind of a rough start with our underclassmen, and it's not all underclassmen. I'm not like pointing a finger and blaming, but we have some work to do. Two main things. One, there's literally garbage cans everywhere. I talk about garbage for a bit, it drives me nuts. And create a safer and more sanitary school environment. I think that that's important. I don't think that that's important. I know that that's important. Kind of just be respectful of our space. Leave it better than we found it, right? And then secondly, I don't think there's any cat to let out of the bag, but there's been a lot of physical altercations at Carson High School, also known as fights. And this one makes me actually sad. I'm not embarrassed. It makes me sad that we have students who have decided the proper way to go about solving our problems is by touching another human being, right? We never have the right to lay our hands on another human being. It's wrong, and we all know that. I think part of the problem is that students don't necessarily even recognize the severity of consequences. So let me lay it out like kind of at minimum, a student would be suspended for 4 days, up to 10 days, depending. They will be ticketed. That's not a Carson High School ticket. That is a Carson City Sheriff's Office ticket where they will have to go see a judge. There could be a monetary fine attached to that. There could also be community service attached to that. There could be a juvenile probation officer attached to that. If it were to be labeled as battery, a student can be suspended or expelled from 180 up to 180 days, possibly forever, like never allowed to come back to public education. That's also a possibility. There's also now, we have to do a reentry plan. So not only, I can talk, so sorry. All right. And then what, like the ending culmination of that was to pick the mentor, and we did end on a positive note with that. There we go. Why does that have to go back? Oh, there it is. All right, and then part of the process would then for the class to go through, have class discussion about conflict resolutions, possible strategies that they could do to help themselves out, such as, listen, check, share, take responsibility for your actions. What are some other possible solutions? And then try to forgive, that whole model. And I just wanted to be super clear with the students because I don't like buyer's remorse on anything. I wanted them to understand, like, if this is a choice, like, we really hammered home, like, there are severe consequences that could be attached to this. So trying to remove any doubt from the student's mind. And then also just reminding the students what their resources are. Questions? The next slide says questions, if you want to know.
Are there any questions or comments from the board at this time?
So, sorry, I do. So when we suspend students, you know, ideally, our main goal is to keep kids in our buildings. And I know we have to have punishments. I'm all for it. There has to be consequences. But do we have, when I was a kid, we had on-campus suspension. And that stunk as for a kid. But it was fantastic because you were still going to school. And I wound up I got invited to that twice as a kid. Sorry, Mom, I only told you about it once. But do we do that? Do we have on-campus suspension, or is a 4-day suspension, you're going home and you're working remote with, somebody else?
We do have in-school suspension. However, for an actual fight where we have mutual combatants, right? Like, this isn't kids shoving each other in the hallway or shoulder check or anything like that, right? Like, that is not a part of any of this. This is like, if you get into a fight, there are severe consequences that are attached to it. But yes, we have in-school suspension too for lesser offenses.
Just a question, just for clarification, maybe for the public. If you have mutual combatants and they're both subject to the 4-day suspension, is that correct?
Yep.
Seeing no other comments, do you have anything else? Oh, go ahead, Mike.
And I think one of the things I just want to say is, one of the things that I'm really proud about in this school district is how high-functioning Carson High School is for how large it is. I don't think we've ever recognized our high school principals appropriately, whether it was Tasha or Bob or Gavin. That's a superintendent level job. That's a huge job. And so when I go on that campus, I was there talking to a class a couple months ago, met with Bob and Tasha there, and I'm always impressed by the environment and how the students are acting. And so I just want to say, I know so many teachers and the administrators there are working hard to maintain a positive environment, and you feel that when you go there. And so I don't want this narrative to get out there and kind of cloud the great things that happen at our high school. We have some stuff to work through. We all acknowledge that. But I think that we can't be afraid to say, yeah, we have this going on, but here's the other part of the story you don't know. I don't want our community to think that our high school is not as great as it is. And so thank you for leading that school. Thank you to the teachers and staff. And thank you to the kids that I've worked with, a lot of those kids. And I know the great kids in this community. And so I just, this is a good school district. And I just wanted to say that.
Thank you for that, Mike. I mean, to piggyback on that, I have hands down the best students in the school district. I walk through that building. I get my 10,000 steps real easy every single day. I'm out and about in that building. I mix it up with the kids. I make sure they know who I am. I smile every single day I'm in that building. I mean, it's an awesome place to work. My staff is, I would not do this job. I would not stand in front of you if I didn't have that staff. They're that good. I can depend on them. They can depend on me. They're amazing. I've worked in that building for 20 years. I hope to retire within that building. And it's an awesome place to work. And we, once again, have amazing students who do amazing, brilliant things with their lives every single year. We ship them off to amazing places when they graduate, and we provide that education and that stepping stone for them. So I can't thank my teachers enough, I can't thank my parents enough, and I can't thank the students enough. So thank you for the opportunity.
Lupe, go ahead.
I also want to express my appreciation to those teachers and administrators for serving as mentors, because they're definitely making that extra effort, to help the students. So thank you for that. And thank you for putting this report together. I know that a couple of parents asked for this information, and so thank you for helping us answer those questions that the parents had and what they requested.
Absolutely, you're welcome.
Yeah, I would just add that thank you also for the report and bring us up to date. And it seems like your hard work and the efforts you and your staff are making, if the conflicts and fights are decreasing, it seems like it's paying off. So just keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments before we move on? Thank you, Mr. Chambers.
Thank you.
We'll move on to item number 9, discussion and possible action to approve the corrective action for the fiscal year 2021 budget violations. And this is for possible action.
Thank you, President Varner. Good evening, trustees. As you know, within the, with the fiscal 21 audit, there was noted a budget violation in our local grants fund. One of our lines was overspent. Our obligation when that is noted is to give some type of description of activity to prevent that from occurring again. So between fiscal services and grants, two really pretty minor changes should make a significant impact in not having that situation come up again. So one of them is simply within the grants department, noting when a budget amendment or budget transfer needs to take place, that it's tracked from beginning to end to make sure that it occurs. And then on my side, creating reporting that actually Mr. Silva will be really excited about this because he's wanted something like this himself within our system where it generates a report for any fund in the audit format, so we can actually see if something like that could potentially be a problem. So it's kind of a little extra step, but I think one that just offers another level of security that it won't happen again. So this is all that ultimately is necessary to get to the Department of Taxation. Once it's submitted to them, they have 30 days to respond. If by chance they aren't satisfied, I may have to bring something back again. I'm not exactly sure how that works, but I know they have 30 days to respond to us with a clean bill or other questions.
Joe, go ahead.
Not a question. I just wanted to thank you because this is here for an action item, but you brought this to our attention before. And we asked some questions then about, what did we do? Were we sloppy? Those kinds of things. And it really just amounted to an honest, a timing issue really is what it was. And I just wanted to thank you for the information you provided and for being transparent about it.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and call for a motion.
Make a motion. I move that the Carson City School District Board of Trustees accept the corrective action letter for the budget violation for fiscal year 2021 and instruct the Director of Fiscal Services to file the letter as requested by the Nevada Department of Taxation.
Second.
Motion by Don Creaney and second by Lupe Ramirez. Is there any board discussion on the motion? Seeing none. Any public comment on the motion? Seeing none. Any online comment?
No, Mr. Varner.
Seeing none, I'll go ahead and call for a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition, say nay. Seeing no opposition, the motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Fueling.
Thank you.
Moving on to item number 10, approval of the consent agenda, and this is for possible action.
I move that we accept the consent agenda as submitted.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any board discussion on the motion? Seeing none, any public comment on the motion? Seeing none, any online comment?
No, Mr. Varner.
Seeing none, I'll go ahead and call for a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Seeing no opposition, the motion carries. Item number 11 is informational items. This is for discussion only. Is there any questions from the board or any concerns by the board members on this item? Seeing none, we'll move on to item number 12, which is a request for future agenda items. Any board member have future agenda items they would like to see? Mike?
I think I'd like an update on what that process is going to be for when we get the finalists for the superintendent position. So what is that process going to look like? And before we schedule it, I think we need to collaborate with the trustees and make sure that it's a time that everyone's available.
Thank you, Mike. Joe?
Not necessarily a future, it will be a future agenda topic eventually, but just the issue of masks. I know we're still in a, we're in a never-ending, pandemic, it seems, and I guess since it's not necessarily a board decision, we approved the reopening plan. It's kind of an operations decision as to when we might go to masks optional, and maybe just an update from, maybe some discussion with Mr. Stokes and his team, and then once they kind of can continue to wrap their heads around it, as I know you're constantly trying to, but then maybe an update to the board on, where we're at and if we have any projections.
And Joe, Mr. Stokes, maybe we could add on that because it's not just about masks. And I think that as a district, we need to start looking at how are we going to mitigate these situations. And so I think we need to be clear with the public so that they know if we don't have bus drivers, this is what's going to happen. Here's how you're going to be informed. And I think really we need a plan. I mean, we need to keep these kids in school as much as possible. And I think that's important right now.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. I appreciate that. That's kind of, I didn't quite get there, but that's what I want as a plan. And yeah, we want to keep these kids in school. I just trying to get there, and to Trustee Walker's point before, we need to get back to normal. It's just a question of how do we do it responsibly.
Any other future agenda items? Seeing none, we'll move on. And well, before I adjourn, I just want to remind the public that the special board meeting that we conducted today will reconvene at 8 o'clock in the morning. And with that, we'll adjourn. Thank you.